Blog Talk Radio.
The purple angel, oh purple angel, you're next to me. Purple angel, oh purple angel, you're next to me. You're next to me.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host and founder of Alzheimer Speaks, Lori LeBay. And basically, if you're new to our show, Alzheimer Speaks is an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. We're all about raising everyone's voice and sharing knowledge and just having everyday conversations to remove the stigmas and to build support and empower people all around the world. And today we're going to have a really special show talking about what other countries are doing for adult day programs called care farms or dementia farms. And it's going to be a fascinating conversation, and that'll be the first hour. The second hour, we're going to be speaking with the author of the book called Don't Leave Me Yet, How My Mother's Alzheimer's Opened My Heart, and that'll be a really great conversation as well. Here at Alzheimer Speaks, again, if you're not overly familiar with us, go to alzheimerspeaks.com and just check us out. There you will find information about our radio show, which we do every Tuesday, Dementia Chats, which is a webinar platform that we do twice a month where our experts actually have dementia, and anyone and everyone is welcome to come and ask their questions. It's just an open forum, no hidden agendas, just really about building community and building support with one another. You'll also find our blog there, and then just a ton of resources. We have an actual resource directory that you can participate in or sign up for our newsletter if you'd like as well. I have to also thank all of our listeners for making us the number one influencer online for Alzheimer's, according to ShareCare, which is the largest health and wellness organization in the world, and Dr. Oz. And that would not have been possible without all of your support. Each time you like us and click on us, if it's sharing it with your Google circles, your friends on Facebook, your LinkedIn colleagues, and your Twitter tribe, all of those things have a huge impact. And I'm a firm believer the more information we can push out there, the more comfortable people are going to feel stepping up and grabbing that information when they're in need. It's just critical to removing the isolation that is out there. And together, again, I know that we are making a difference, and we're a powerful, powerful collaboration. In fact, if you're not aware of the Purple Angel Project, that's something that you may want to check out too. Again, you can just go to alzheimerspeaks.com. There's actually a Kickstarter program going on right now. This was a symbol that was designed by a man with dementia over in the UK. It's in over 17 countries, and they're doing a film about the history and the power of people just joining together for a cause, and so check that out. If you don't want to contribute or you don't have the funds, that's fine. You can still be part of the Purple Angel Project. Just go to our About page and you'll find more information there on how to do that. A few other organizations I just want to give a big shout out to is HealthStar Home Health here in Minnesota. I absolutely adore them to death. They are just wonderful to work on, and they're going to be, again, out at the Minnesota State Fair, and we're going to be doing a big PR rollout at that time regarding some fascinating information that I can't talk about yet, but I will keep you posted, and as the time comes when I can tell you what that project is, I will definitely let you all know. A couple of organizations people may want to tap into is Alzheimer's Disease International. That is the association of all Alzheimer's associations around the world. So no matter where you are, you're going to be able to find the closest chapter to you. You'll also get a lot of great global resources as well, and research and information on that site. If you're looking for kind of a holistic approach, check out the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation. They just do a great job talking about diet and exercise and meditation, and are just wonderful, wonderful people. Really enjoy working with them quite a bit. And then so many of our listeners are dealing with different types of dementia that might not be Alzheimer's. Maybe it's Lewy body, maybe it's frontal temporal lobe. Both of those have their own national organizations that have specific information to those set of symptoms. There's also the National Aphasia Association, which deals with speech. And aphasia, just in case you're not sure how to spell it, is APHASIA. That's APHSIA. And again, all of these are just wonderful, wonderful resources for you. Many people also ask about getting involved in a clinical trial. And you can go to the Alzheimer's team on Facebook, or again, you can go to Alzheimer's Speaks just right on our front page. There's actually a really simple survey that you can take in the right-hand column to find out if you will qualify for one of their studies. You can really help advance Alzheimer's research by enrolling yourself if you have dementia or maybe a loved one in a clinical trial today. Again, there's no cost. You don't have to worry about that. All of that is covered. The last couple of things I want to mention are, again, on our homepage of our main website, the Dementia Action Alliance group, which is a fairly new organization that has started up to really be person-centered and really attack some of the needs that people are living with this disease, are working on a survey. In fact, the survey will be closing, I believe it's the 26th of this month. There are two different surveys. One is for a person with dementia, and the other is for a care partner. And we would love you to fill that out. That will help us figure out exactly what the needs are for those living with dementia. We can't guess at this. We really, really do need your input and appreciate it very much. It'll take you about 10 minutes to do the survey, if that. Very easy to answer, and again, always open to feedback. So that's all I've got for announcements for today. So let me go ahead and introduce our featured guest for this first hour. Martin Fisher is a Dutch native that moved to the U.S. and Montana in the spring of 2012. And he married a Montana native named Ida. And they have 3 young children and currently live in Somers, Montana. Martin has his master's degree from the University of Amsterdam in operations research. And over the past 12 years, he has been involved in the development of so-called multifunctional agriculture, in which farms serve their local communities in a variety of creative ways, including the concept of care farms. And I just adore this whole model. In the Netherlands, in fact, care farms are widespread and as a whole form the largest source of day programs in his native country. Over 1,500 farms empower a variety of clients, over 30,000 people annually they serve. So this is going to be a really I think fun topic, one that is needed. I love to see creative new ideas all the time. Martin himself works at A+ Healthcare, where he runs a care farm program under the name of Lifeside Farms. In addition to that, he is involved with the implementation of some of the innovative new home and community-based healthcare that A+ team manages. So welcome, Martin. How are you today?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm really excited to hear everything that is going on. Before we get into our questions, though, I just want to give a shout out to a few others that are joining us today, so that everybody knows who all is on the call. And again, we always encourage people to utilize the chat box if you have any questions or comments, and then you can also call in live at 714-364-4757. That's 714-364-4757. We also have joining us Alon Caspi, who is he's a dementia behavior specialist and gerontologist, and Alon's just a doll. He does amazing work, and he also works with me on dementia chats. So I'm just going to pull you in and say hi, Alon, and make sure you're still with us.
Hi, Lori. Hi, Martin and Judy. I'm so thrilled that Martin agreed to share his insights about this innovative model, and that you are giving him a platform to disseminate his ideas and his experiences. So very excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun conversation. And then we're also lucky to have with us Judy Berry. Judy Berry is the founder of Dementia Specialist Consulting, and she is really well known for a concept that she had here in Minnesota called Lakeview Ranch. So welcome, Judy.
Hi, Lori. Thank you for having me. And Martin,
Hi.
I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
All right.
Great. The other person that we've got on the phone, which was a connection that was just made through a friend of mine, is Joe Clade, and he is the director in sales and marketing for a group called The Landing at Peachtree Creek, and they do a lot with animals as well, so he wanted to call in and participate in the call. But our main focus is going to be with Martin, and then I'll be pulling these individuals in as we go along with the show for input and so forth. So, Martin, first of all, one of the questions I ask everybody who's on the show, just so our audience has a little personal insight to you, have you ever been personally touched by dementia within your own family or circle of friends?
Well, I actually had been listening to some of your previous shows, and I anticipated that question, and I realized I haven't had to deal with it so much. I've met people, and obviously in my work now, I meet a lot of people that live with dementia or related challenges, and my grandma had some early onset, or I don't know if you can call it that, early stages, I would say, and just in the last few years, I've been learning more and more about it. But what I mostly recall from my grandma is that she would ask me every time I met her in the last few years if I thought that she was having dementia, which was making her very anxious. And that's all I have to share in a personal sense. And obviously now in my work, I get many heartwarming stories that I really like. One of my favorite is one of the ladies who came to our program several times, and she has a very, very short-term memory. And sometime in the evening after she was at the farm that morning, she told someone that somebody who was with her that day, and she said, "I don't know what I did today, but I sure liked it." And then the other day, Alon explained to me how that works, that the emotional part of the brain holds on to a memory much longer than the cognitive part of the brain. So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because it's so important to people for people to understand that effect and the impact can be long lasting, and for all of us. I mean, it's that sense of feeling grounded and peaceful and comfortable, in our own skin and in our own environment, and that's just critical to all of us, and it's no different. And in fact, in my opinion, is even more important, when someone's having some cognitive impairment there. Well, Martin, why don't you explain to our audience what exactly is a care farm or dementia farm?
Well, the kind of the basic idea is something that is not new. I think for over many centuries even, and at least up until about 60 years ago, many farms would have grandma or grandpa or a disabled brother or sister live on the farm and contribute in whatever way they can. And about 15, 20 years ago, more and more farms in Europe were kind of reinventing that model, and not always for their own family members, but also for people who are either living in assisted living or nursing homes, or people who are living at home and dealing with some sort of disability and challenge. And these are normal farms who just say, hey, 1 or 2 days a week, I'm going to open up my farms for people to come and volunteer or just spend a day on a farm. And these can be, vegetable farms or farms with animals. It doesn't matter. They're real working farms that just 1 day a week say, we're going to set aside, our high production working, but we always have our chores and our things to do and a lunch to share. And on that day, they have participants that will come. And for the participants, it's a great experience because they come to the farm, and on the farm, there's always something you can do. If you're not strong, you can go collect eggs or maybe feed some animals. Or if you're not even very mobile, you can just enjoy the hubbub of the farm, sit outside and maybe walk around a little bit or just help prepare lunch. And so care farms have many different shapes and sizes. And here in Montana, I have, there's one farm that I work with is a 1 acre farm that grows microgreens for restaurants in the area. And then another farm is a 400 acre ranch that does a lot of forestry work. And every farm has kind of its unique profile, what matches people's interests. But so basically they're real farms. It's just that once they started opening up to people to come visit these farms, we noticed that when a person is on the farm and they're normally not at all active, they suddenly have a day where they push their limits in terms of physical activity, and they might push their limits in terms of socializing with people that are new in their lives. And most importantly, they feel like they can contribute to something, and they're not a patient. They're not somebody receiving care. They're somebody who is giving love, attention, and work for a community that they can be a part of.
Oh, very, very cool. And I think that's interesting that you say that, they really have been part of society and community for ages. But, here in the U.S., I think most of us see it as being pretty foreign, but it's not. People take family in all the time. We just don't really talk about it. And I think this whole farming concept and feeling purposeful is really neat. Can you give us a little bit more specifics about the program that you're building in Montana?
Yeah. So what we learned in the Netherlands is that over the years there's been a lot of research on care farms and the effects that it has, and it has just proven to be something that's at least as valuable as a lot of day programs that are provided within the healthcare system. And so when I moved to Montana, I met Chris Carlson, who's the owner of A Plus Healthcare, and she was just enamored with the idea right away. And she said, within Medicaid, but also many other programs like from the Older American Act programs, they said there are services that are designed to make people feel happy or make people, socialize, get out, and do something and interact with the community, or at least get physically active. And so when we started, we just started talking to communities, the agencies on aging, the mental health providers, lots of different partners in the community, and we asked them if they thought it was something they thought would fill a need, and everyone said it would. And I looked around and around, but I couldn't find anything quite like it in the rest of America. So we just started talking to Medicaid and figured out what the requirements are to make care farming a service that would be acceptable within that system. And just like I learned in the Netherlands, we had to make our farmers almost into a care attendant, even though they remain a farmer at heart. We have to make sure we run background checks and give them training on how to properly deal with different populations. And just like in the Netherlands, we found that if you find the specific type of farmer, they truly have a love for people and love for empowering people and seeing what a person can do versus what they can't do. It's just kind of an innate thing that a farmer does when he looks at people. And so by finding these specific farmers that really have a passion for people, and train them to be safe and responsible with clients, we were able to meet all the standards within the different programs that are already offered to people with disabilities or people with aging challenges in the community. And so we started with about 4 farms and just a handful of people, and now we have about 10 farms that will open up several days a week to different clients. Some of our farms have only one specific population, but on most of our farms we like to combine older people with younger people with developmental disabilities, because they really feed off of each other in an extremely positive way. And it kind of feeds into the idea that on a farm, we're all different and we're all accepting each other, because everyone can contribute in their own way. And so, if you look at a normal day, we provide transportation for people to and from the farm. We have them usually stay at the farm from 10 to 3, and there's all kinds of chores, but obviously the pace is very low because most of our clients normally do not work or haven't worked for a very long time, and farmer will just find activities that fit the participants. And they usually spend a long time having a lunch together, which is very important. And many people, don't get an opportunity to actually prepare food for themselves anymore, and people love it. So lunch is a big piece, and then in the afternoon there'll be other chores. I also have one farm where they process their own wool from sheep they keep, and we have kind of a regular group of older ladies who just love going out there, and they will work together on dyeing wool or knitting or anything like that. And so one important element that we also incorporate is that because our farmers are in effect a service provider, we pay them for the day that they are working with the clients. In the Netherlands, that has turned into a whole new source of revenue for usually wives of farmers or daughters of farmers, also men obviously, but mostly women that can suddenly become a service provider and have a job on a farm that is related to farming but not actually agriculture itself. And in Montana we're starting to go that same direction, and so it's a really neat way to kind of build a bridge between agriculture and the community and the other way around.
Well, that was one of my questions. I was wondering if the farmers get compensated for their work, because you're managing, but you can't be at all these different places at different times, and how all that
exactly.
works. So
Yeah, and I like them to be totally available for my clients, because the clients, have all kinds of needs, and their needs might change. And so if one day they are just dealing with some trauma or having some traces of depression, and a lot of my clients, especially seniors, do struggle with depression, some days a walk will be better, and we want the farmer to be free of the pressure of feeling like they have to produce, so that they can truly mold their program around the client, and they do. And I recently had a visit from Elon, and he saw it too. Usually for people who are new to the idea, they're like, what? There are people working on farms and the farmer gets paid for it? But if you were to come visit and see it, you'll see that it is truly, it's like a recreational day program except that for my clients, it truly feels like they're doing work, and they are. And a lot of them, will actually apologize if they can't come to the day program because they feel like the farmer really needs them, and that that gives them a great sense of fulfillment and empowerment.
Which is wonderful. I think it's fantastic, and I mean, I can see where people think, oh, I mean, it's kind of like with kids too. If you're using them, to better your business and stuff. But our farms have just struggled so much financially too. I can see this, really just being a nice offset for them, and a feeling of contribution and giving back as well. I think it's just a great concept all the way around. Really, really nice. Can you tell us a little bit about, what type of training or how much training does somebody have to go through with this, or is that something that's ongoing?
Yeah, it is ongoing, and we do a lot of peer-to-peer training where farmers kind of share experience they had and how they dealt with it. Because we don't just serve seniors, we also serve younger people with things like traumatic brain injuries or developmental disabilities. So even though usually we have way less behaviors of people than they would in other settings, we do have some behaviors, and so a lot of how to deal with those kind of situations are shared between farmers. When they start, obviously they have to learn a lot about abuse and neglect and safety and just kind of learning about different injuries, things like dementia or traumatic brain injuries, are just something that a lot of people don't know a lot about until it hits them, via a family member or something like that. And then, safety is a big factor, and all of our farms have to undergo a risk analysis on their farm, and let me just pause there for a minute, because risks is a very interesting topic in my program. We know that there are risks on farms, and our clients usually really appreciate being exposed to risk, because a lot of people who deal with health challenges are put in environments where they are free from any kind of risk, and it makes people feel like they're not fully alive. And so we allow risks, but we have to obviously, be careful and mitigate risks of getting too far out of hand. But it creates some moments where, I'll have a young man who's on a farm and has been in several different day programs, and suddenly on this farm he's allowed to split wood, and it's just wonderful to see. And on the other hand, obviously I have to be careful and include families and clients in the fact that there are some risks. You can't trip on a wire on a farm, or you shouldn't go into the barn with the bull and things like that. And so we do work and train our farmers on how to be mindful of risks, yet not eliminate them, because it's part of the strength of the program.
Okay. Well, in that, I know so many people talk about the risk factor, and again, I think here in the U.S., we really try to minimize everything because of liability over here, and yet, like you said, we all live with risks every day, and it's just part of life, and it helps give us value and enjoyment. And again, you really have to be able to monitor that in terms of what is purposeful and how it's going to affect somebody's engagement in living life, as a whole. And sometimes I think we strip people of that here in the U.S. I think we're getting so better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've done over time. We've first I had to be extra careful, and I could copy most of the things we did in the Netherlands to here, but the risk piece I really had to think a lot more about and put more things in place. But we have found that if we involve the family and involve the clients in what we do, people are actually quite quite eager, to allow some sense of risk, and if we really involve them in making those choices, it's been just a wonderful thing. The cool thing about a farm is that in this world where kind of everything is global and virtual and not real, a farm is very real. And you have to watch where you're walking, and if you deal with the animals, you have to be extremely mindful and on task. And it helps, that piece of focus helps people get out of their head and out of their worries. And so the realness is a very important piece. And I don't know that when we started with care farms, 15, 20 years ago, we'd ever thought that would be such an important piece of the intervention in terms of, healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just pretty unique. We've been exploring other options, but usually we find that just the combination of the outdoors, the animals, the real work, that comes together in a very unique way on a farm.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. I am going to just pull Elon in here, and I know, since he deals with behaviors and is a gerontologist by trade, Elon, do you want to just maybe highlight what you see are some of the health benefits of these care farm concepts?
Sure, I can relate to health and perhaps psychological and social and spiritual aspect. So Martin shared with me several resources a few days ago, and that kind of helped me consolidate some of the things I saw during the inspiring trip that he gave me in the, I should say, pioneer and visionary care farms in Montana. So kind of pulling it together into the document that I know you will share after the program, that provides more detail on each one of those domains. I want to kind of emphasize, reinforce what Martin said, that there are many unique aspects of farms that are dedicated for people with dementia. And one of the unique things is that many of the therapeutic benefits could be realized simultaneously and continuously over the period of time that the person participates in the program. And when you look at traditional care settings or settings where people live, people with dementia, many times you see isolated activities that maybe generate benefits in one or two or at most three domains. And of course, there's exceptional programs out there that do more than that in a holistic way. But the beauty of the care farm, from the little that I learned about it in recent months, is that it's the cumulative effect of naturally integrated qualities of the farm. And that's combined with what Martin talked about, which he told me when we met in Montana, is the unique approach of the farmers to people with intellectual disabilities, traumatic brain injuries, and dementia. And you can train a CNA, give them hundreds of hours, but if they're not suitable for the job in a nursing home, assisted living, or even home health aides, then you won't achieve the desired therapeutic effect for the person. And that's not to suggest that every farmer is necessarily suitable for this. There's got to be some selection going on, of course, with the qualities that Martin described. Now, to your question, obviously, being in the outdoors, we know, and maintaining connections with nature that so many people with dementia are deprived of, they can really benefit from the natural light, activating the vitamin D mechanisms, physical relaxation, alleviation of depression, and improved mood. There's even a study that showed improved food and fluid intake. And we know that many people with dementia, particularly in the mid to late stages, are at risk of weight loss and dehydration. And then you have one of the things that is important to realize is that nature, in the context of care farm, is a broader term than what we typically see as nature reserves, such as natural forests and wild nature. And we can talk about it more. Another point is that the farm offers many opportunities for naturally occurring physical activities. walking to the barn, household chores, gardening, planting, harvesting, caring for the animals. And as Martin said, it happens. These are real experiences, real life experiences, and there's no substitute for that. Many times in nursing homes, we create artificial situations, and I think that people with dementia can sense the difference. The other aspect is the multi-sensory stimulation in a very organic and spontaneous way, and we can think about smell on the farm and taste of the food and the touch of the animals and hearing the birds and the beautiful sights of the, simply seeing the leaves of the trees in the wind. These could have very healing effect and can also almost be meditative. What Martin talked about, feeling needed and useful. A lot of people with dementia want to continue and be active and contribute to their communities, and I think there's many opportunities for that on the farm. Many people with dementia grew up on farms, and they loved working in the gardens and enjoyed company of pets. And we know that the long-term memory remains relatively intact in many well into the disease. So we can really tap into the treasure chamber of unlock cherished memories from the person's distant past using reminiscence. And those things can be prompted by activities on the farm. Of course, the farmers need to learn about the life history of the person to reinforce these effects. Now, as Martin pointed out to me yesterday, that participation on care farm is not for all people, and they have to be selected carefully to increase the likelihood that we'll enjoy the therapeutic benefits of the farm. And because there's a broad and diverse range of activities on the farm, it provides choice, and if it's adapted to the preferences and ability of the person, then you can see real learning and growth for these individuals. And I think one example is learning about the cycle of life, as people on farms can see birth and death of farm animals, for example, and can reflect on it within their own experiences. And then you have socialization and friendships between peers and with the farmer, and then again the intergenerational connection that we know are very powerful with this, can be very powerful with this population. And with regards to reduction of behaviors, there's some preliminary indication in research, but we need more studies to demonstrate that. But I have no doubt that when it's planned well and delivered well, you can see substantial reduction of various behavioral expressions. And then meeting the spiritual needs of people with dementia that are often overlooked in many care settings and living environments. And this could simply, and spirituality, when I talk about spirituality, it's more in a broader term, simply being meditating by working in the field and connection with nature, with animals, and harvesting vegetables and fruits, etc. And then the fact that the physical environment can provide a sense of being at home, and the small scale of some of those farms, but other physical environment features must be addressed to ensure that they are dementia-friendly, and my document describes those in detail. And then, kind of to close, the fact that the unique characteristic of a farm can provide a sense of normal life, which can reduce the stigma that many people with dementia experience in other settings. And the reason is because farms can provide when farmers are trained, and with their inherent characteristics, they can provide a strength-based and empowerment approach to the people. And the last piece is respite for family members who are many times exhausted from caring and supervising their loved ones, and they really need a break and time off from these caring activities so they can rest, recharge, catch up on sleep, and meet friends, run errands, exercise, and do things that they enjoy doing. And that can reduce the social isolation, the burnout, which put them in a better position to care for these individuals. So that's kind of the outline, but the resource provides more detail.
Okay. Well, that's great. Martin, do you have any comments to what Elon had just commented on?
Yeah, well, the respite piece was something that was kind of an eye opener for me too. I found that most respite in a home setting that is provided right now in America means that a care attendant goes into a client in their caregiver's home and takes care of the client for the day while the caregiver goes out to have a day on their own to rest up. And what we do is we take the client out and give them a day on the farm. And that has been something that was very, very welcomed by many people, because if you get a caregiver to come into your home and take care of your loved one, a lot of informal caregivers, so their partners, feel guilty when they leave and they have to be out and away from the home, whereas some of them would maybe enjoy being at home, just kicking their feet up on the couch and having kind of a day where they don't have that concern of their loved one. And so by taking the client away and giving them a wonderful day, we take away that feeling of guilt and the joy that the client has on the farm that day spills over into up to a week long feeling of being a little more content and happy, which is a longer lasting effect than just the one day that the caregiver has a break. So that's been a really neat effect that we've been seeing here, especially in the programs where people have fairly high needs, like with dementia and Alzheimer in the more progressed phases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I just think the concept is just a perfect match. I mean, I think of farming, way back when, and I mean, it really was community-based. It's a total team effort, working together, and what a beautiful place to be able to match those things up and to have it in a home environment, yet be purposeful, yet be in the middle of community and feeling a sense of purpose. I just think it's just a fantastic concept. And
the exercise piece is something I'd like to stress too, especially for Alzheimer's and dementia. I remember one farm in the Netherlands that was specialized in dementia, and they would often, one of their big things is that they would take their clients on fairly big walks on the farm. Mm-hmm. And there was clients that came in not feeling comfortable to go out into the community on their bikes or things like that. And after a few months on the farm with regular walks, their stamina got increased so much they actually regained the confidence to ride bicycles in the communities or go out into a shopping center because they were physically stronger. Whereas if they're home and feeling anxious about going out, their physical strength will decrease fairly quickly. And so we sometimes call this type of program a hidden program, because people are actually on an exercise program and they don't feel like they are. They're just going to the farm to help and work. Yep. But it is a way to trick them into being physically active in a way that feels like it makes sense to the client.
Yeah, I need one of those. I'm an aversion to exercise, so it's like, but
Me too, but yeah.
I love doing gardening and doing things that are purposeful, and I don't have a problem at all getting down and dirty and sweaty and doing things if there's a task at hand that needs to be done. And so
exactly.
I probably really have to implement that more in my life, and just stop thinking about the formal structure of exercise, because it's just it's never stuck with me. I'll go in spurts and stuff, but the other has really been a lifelong thing for me, and so that's really a nice way to put it. It's one of those hidden benefits in the program.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I like to call it functional exercise. I ride my bike to work here too, because it's it saves me money, keeps me fit, and doesn't cost much more time than driving my car. And it's a functional exercise, easy to stay fit that way.
Good. I'm going to pull Judy Berry in. Judy has just done some exceptional work here in Minnesota with the Lakeview Ranch program, where kind of a rural setting where I'll never forget seeing the animals come into the home. And so, Judy, this has to just be right up your sleeve in terms of what Martin is talking about with these care farms. What are your thoughts, Judy?
Well, I'm just really excited about what they're doing. as you know, my need to try something different came from a personal experience with my mom, who had, been subjected to all the traumatic things that happen in many skilled nursing facilities. She had behavior and was kicked out 12 times in 7 years and in and out of psych hospitals and wound up the last 2 years drugged. And what they told me, that she had to be compliant in her environment. And it really upset me that I had no way to fix anything for her. And what I learned through the process was that the behavior that they were medicating her for, telling me it was part of their the brain damage from dementia, I saw, because I knew her, I saw that her needs were emotional, not physical. And so when I started Lakeview Ranch after she passed away, I decided that I would have an environment that focused mainly on the emotional needs of people. And I actually had animals on the ranch before I had residents, because I knew how important that connection could be, and that there was a totally different emotional connection with an animal than with a human for most people. And so what we did was we also, in addition to people helping with the chores and, the people who were able to do that, we kept people till they died. So we also had to implement things that would help people in later stages that were not as physically capable. And it was amazing to see what the animals could do. And for the people that weren't able to go outside and do things in the barn, we brought the animals, miniature donkeys, miniature horses, goats, sheep. We had a trained mini pig, and also a wallaby that we got in the last few years. And that was an amazing experience for the residents. And although the later stage residents couldn't tell you what the wallaby was, they were just amazed because it lived in the house with them, and they bottle fed it, and, it would come jump in their laps and, lick at them. And those kind of emotional connections were huge. And we went a little bit further and trained some of our animals to help with range of motion. We would have a horse come in, and we had animals that would pick something up, but they would bring it back to the resident and stop 10 feet from them, so the resident had to grab for it. And it was, Martin was saying, it's those hidden things that really make a difference. I mean, we didn't have anybody complain about having to reach for a toy from an animal, or, but they would if we tried to get them to stretch their arms. And, so the whole thing, and our program also included a period of time of about 2 years where we combined at-risk teens in the communities, the surrounding communities, and we would bring them in for a 12 or 24-week program, and they would learn how to train the animals to do some kind of activity that would happen with the resident, but they also had time in the house with the residents, and they would sort of pick the resident that they sort of connected with. And during this program, at the end, it was just amazing. They had made connections with people, the first probably non-threatening emotional connection that they'd ever had. And when the kids came in, many of them, most of them were teenagers. The attitude was, I don't want to be here, and they were forcing me to do this. And when they left, they were coming back and volunteering, and they were crying, and, it was amazing to see what happened when you mix intergenerational stuff with the animals, with the residents with dementia. And when Martin talked about risk, we were very aware of that when we started. There's a lot more laws here in the U.S. than maybe there are for those kinds of things abroad. But we've never had any trouble because all of our families signed a risk waiver when their resident moved in. And they were aware of the things that it wasn't under the laws of a nursing home and that we were not removing all the risk, but they were very much in favor of their loved one living with a quality of life and some purposeful activity, even if something would happen. I mean, we took people fishing on a boat, and one guy on his way back walking to the bus, he collapsed and died. And, that was our first death from anything or that was associated with some of this other activity. But the family, they were sad that he died, but they were happy that he died coming back from fishing, doing the thing he loved the most in his life. And if he died, 3 months sooner because he was out maybe walking more than he should have or whatever, they were happy. So, what we found was that you need to create, on a farm, it's already there. As us doing a ranch, we brought animals. We had animals that lived there. We had people who helped throw hay bales and, doing all kinds of stuff that made them feel like they were contributing. And our whole focus there was to focus on those emotional needs that go unmet in most places because of lack of staff and lack of staff training and lack of staff support. And like you or Martin said, you can train and train and train, but if that person doesn't have that in their heart, we had staff who hated the animals, just bellyached all the time about having to feed the dog or, something like that. And those people are just not the right people for what we're trying to do. But we were able to, our focused population were people like my mother who had been in and out of many places and in and out of hospitals and come in totally snowed on drugs. And we would get rid of the drugs, the psychotropic drugs that they have them, on. And we'd watch their personality come back. And then we would be able to meet the emotional needs of that person. And that was the main focus that, and then creating a purposeful life. Where they could go out and garden and they did their own canning and they, taught me many, many things. But this whole thing with care farms is just right up what I've been doing, and we have been able to eliminate 93% of all behavior in people who had previously had multiple behavior hospitalizations. So I've learned a lot. I'm in the process now of sharing what I've learned, and it's just been an amazing journey, and I wish Martin all the luck in the world. I hope we get to meet one day soon. And I would like to be involved in helping people understand the needs of people with dementia as it relates to farm animals and any type of activity that creates purpose.
Well, that's wonderful. One of my favorite stories, and I share it every now and then when we're talking, but, because here in the U.S., again, we kind of can be stick in the muds with our rules and not be as person-centered, because everyone's running around with their checklist. And one of my favorite stories you told me was about the time you had the surveyors out, and one of the horses was in the solarium and pooped, right inside the house. And, the surveyor was just probably shocked. And the staff just scooped it up, cleaned it up, and just said nothing like, aromatherapy. Which it's just such a beautiful story. You're out on the farm, animals and people have accidents at times, and you just deal with it and move on,
Yeah.
and instead of making a big stink over it, and I think there's so many
Really a big
good
thing.
Yeah, good.
But
good lessons.
the surveyor later told me on the exit interview thing that she was just amazed at how the staff handled that situation, because I said that's the first time the horse has actually taken a big dump like that, and it had to do it right in front of her. But our neighbors, when they tried to shut us down when we first did this, and they couldn't do it on reasons that we were doing something wrong in the area, they actually went to the state with the fact that we had animals and we were bringing them in the house, and that was dirty and it was a danger to the residents. And we got a huge support from the state of Minnesota back to these neighbors saying they're creating a quality of life for these residents, and they're taking every precaution to make sure that things are as sanitary as possible. But, let's give these people a chance at life. And I was just amazed.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Judy, and keep up the great work. I'm going to go ahead and pull Joe Keaton. And Joe, do you want to just tell people a little bit about what you are up to? We only have a few minutes left here in this hour, but I want to make sure that we let people know what you're also doing with animals.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks so much, Lori. Thanks for what you do, and thanks so much for sharing, Martin, and for your insight as well, Elon and Judy. And we work for a group called Peregrine Senior Living, and animals are such a big, important part of what we do every day. We have goats and pigs and chickens here, and kind of that same type of a care farm mentality. I've been taking so many notes as you've been speaking, Martin, and much appreciated. And one of the purposes that we have found that has been so valuable is something that our president, Stephen Bowman, has talked about so many times, is that families that are dealing with dementia are dealing in a state of crisis, and there's so much fear that goes along with even walking through the doors of a memory care community or anything along those lines. So what we found with our animals, not only do they give our residents purpose and unconditional love, but there is that sense of joy that comes along with that instead of children and grandchildren being afraid of going to visit grandma or their mother, that it's, I can't wait to go and see the chickens, or I can't wait to go and see the pig and feed them a carrot. And then the residents that have dementia, they have this sense of pride of, let me take you out back and show you the chicken coop, and this is the way that we get our pig to come around the side here. We call them this way, and there's all of a sudden they have something to teach their families and a sense of purpose that just wasn't there before, that they're able to just have joy rather than that moment of crisis and fear. But it's something that only animals can bring, that only that farm life mentality can bring, and I really think it's a beautiful thing. Thanks so much for what you're doing, Martin, and for sharing that. It's something that we hope to employ here at Peregrine Senior Living as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And Elon's got a paper that he has worked up, and I'm going to be adding, I'll do a whole other post on this with just information. I know Judy had sent some information too on some research, and Martin, and so I'll be adding some more onto the blog for our listeners to be able to grab that information, because there's so much. I've got limited space here on Blog Talk on what I can put, and last night it was giving me a run for my money on what I could even do within that with that frame. But we will definitely get this information out to people. Martin, I'm going to go ahead and pull you back in to the conversation. I cannot thank you enough for bringing this to the U.S. and allowing us to have this wonderful conversation today. I think there's a lot of excitement, and I'll do everything in my power to help raise the profile of what you're doing and working with Elon and Judy and Joel as well. Animals are really important to all of us, and that feeling of purpose, that feeling of connection. And sometimes I think we tend to overlook that, which is a big mistake. And so, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up here?
Sure, real quick. And one thing that I noticed that once people with dementia are a little further along in their process of the disease, that sometimes they get pretty anxious when they're not with their loved one. Then obviously at some point they might not even recognize them. But so we've been inspired by a great program in England, which is called Dementia Adventure, where they take people with dementia and their loved ones out and doing outdoor activities, up and including rafting and rock climbing and whatever people may be capable of. And we're not going to go quite as radical as that, but we are starting a program where it's kind of a combination support group and fun outings. And the fun outings that we're going to do are going to incorporate either kind of geographical settings like big overlook points where people can look at a valley and say, hey, what changed here in the last 50 years? Or visiting natural areas with guided walks with rangers and things like that, because those are usually topics that can tap into older memories and they can be fully participant in that. And so that's another thing we're working on, and I just wanted to thank you and Joe and Judy and Alon too, and Judy, a special kudos to you. It sounds like you're a wonderful, groundbreaking pioneer. And that was very inspirational for me to hear.
Wonderful. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you? Should they go to the Flathead Care farm for WordPress, or where would you like to push people to?
Right now, that would probably be the best. If you could maybe put that on your blog, that would be great. But www.flatheadcarefarming.wordpress.com. That's our own kind of not very professional website, but we're still in our starting up phases. But that would be a great one. And if anyone has a question, I think my contact information is on that site as well. And if anyone has interest in starting this in their own communities, I am glad to share whatever we figured out and share our processes and things that we developed, because I don't think I can go all over America and help implement it. So the least I can do is share what we figured out and help others do it on their own as well. And we may be looking at Minnesota as a place to start, and I know Alon and some others are interested in that, and I hope to be able to contribute to them as well.
Well, that'd be wonderful. And on the radio show, we do have on that page your website, your email, and your phone number that you gave us. And
Perfect.
If you're interested in getting a hold of Alon, his website and blog is also listed on there. And then, Judy, I'm just going to ask what contact information you would like to give people.
Oh, they can go to my website, Dementia Specialist Consulting, which is www.dementiaspecialistconsulting.com, and all of the contacts are on there also.
Okay, wonderful. And thank you for joining us today. And then, Joe, do you have any particular website or email address that you would like to give people as well?
Absolutely. You can either follow me on Twitter at Joe Clyde, which is at JoeKleid, and then our website is www.peregrineseniorliving.com, and that's PEREGRINE seniorliving.com, and there you can see a little bit more information about what we do. But thank you so much for everything that you do, Lori.
Okay, well, thank you. And then, Alon, I'm going to pull you in and see if there's any, like I said, I have your blog and your website listed, and then we'll be posting this article that you've done regarding kind of the benefits of care farms as you see it. Anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, I have a section in the resource that you're going to post. The last page is about safety considerations, and I know we talked about it today, and people can read about it a little bit. But I wanted to share one quote that I heard recently where a researcher, I think, did research in Europe with this population, and he said, the paradoxical effect is that if you pay less attention to risk and more attention to living, it actually reduces risk. So I think that kind of reinforces what Martin said. And, of course, we must put will be very thoughtful and carefully think about measures and procedures to put in place and to assess it over time, because dementia is a moving target. But we also need to shift away from a fear-driven approach to one that is more filled with hope, purpose, and meaning in life.
So agree. Well, I want to thank you all for your time again today. It's just been absolutely fabulous to have you all on this call, and like I said, I'm looking forward to hearing how these care farms progress. I would love to see these for dementia specific here in Minnesota. I love the idea of the multi-generational and just that. I mean, the benefits are just, I think, absolutely massively huge, and it would just be wonderful to see. I've only seen one other kind of day program that's a little bit different from our standard structure here in the U.S., and that's one up in Canada where they've done more like a health and fitness club and made it like that. But I love this farm concept of really being able to touch and feel and purposely be part of the community. I think it's just a beautiful concept. So thank you all again, and we will be in touch very soon getting updates. I'm going to go ahead and go into our mid-program highlights, and then I'll be introducing our second guest today. For those of you that didn't hear our last radio show, it was quite interesting. We had Kathy Brogy on, and she is kind of the lead in charge of the Purple Cities Initiative, which is all about creating dementia-friendly communities. In fact, Kathy, along with myself and many others, were highlighted in the Parade magazine this last Sunday. Paula Spencer Scott, who wrote the book Surviving Alzheimer's, which is probably one of the best books out there that anybody can get, did just a beautiful article about the grassroots effort and the changing format and the power of one. And so if you haven't seen that article, you may want to do that. But I would also encourage you to go ahead and listen to that last radio show. Next week, we are going to be having a Canadian group on and we're going to be talking about a movie called Cracked, which will be very fun. We're also going to have some of our leaders here in the U.S. on Memory and Alzheimer's Cafe, and I'm hoping to get the Kickstarter campaign for the Purple Angel on, but we might even be doing a special show on that. We're just trying to coordinate schedules. Again, if you're not familiar with the Purple Angel program, just go to alzheimerspeaks.com to the About page. That will give you information there. On our homepage, right up top, there's information on the Kickstarter program where you can help pull this documentary together of how this global symbol came to be and how fast it's spreading. Today, we also have a Dementia Chat I'm going to keep saying setting session, and that will be at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, 2 Central, 1 Mountain, and noon Pacific Time, and that's 8 o'clock if you're over in London. We'd love to have you join us. Our last session was back on the 9th, where we discussed dementia farms. Actually, Alan had brought that up, and that's how this show actually came to be. But the majority of our time, we spoke about the effects of changing terminology and the impact that it has on those dealing with dementia. Many people right now are getting, they're diagnosed with dementia or Lewy body, and all of a sudden now it's mild cognitive impairment and kind of the backlash of what is happening with that. On the blog, you will find the grassroots movement, which again is about the Purple Angel program, so you can go there to get that Kickstarter information. There's also a link to The Power of One, the article that Paula Spencer Scott wrote in the Parade article. I also noted if you're out in Pennsylvania, there is a great play called My Mother Has Four Noses, and that's just going to be out there for a short time, but you will not want to miss it. I've seen it like 3 or 4 times, and if I was out in Pennsylvania, I'd go see it again. It's a great musical. You'll laugh, you'll cry, very poignant, and very well done. And let's see, last thing I want to mention is the Dementia Action Alliance survey closes out on June 26th, so we'd love you to participate in that. Again, you can just go to alzheimerspeaks.com on our homepage there. It'll get you right to that survey. There's one for people with dementia as well as one for the care partners. So if you could help us out by taking that, we would highly, highly appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next guest here. Very excited to have her with us. Constance Hansted is an author, a poet, and a business owner. Her poetry has appeared in the Comstock Review, Rattle, and she's just kind of been all over many, many journals, very well known for her literary work. And the Ode to Beige was published in Diane Lockwood's Crafty Poet in 2013. Her first book, which is called Don't Leave Yet, How My Mother's Alzheimer's Opened My Heart, was actually a finalist in the Pacific Northwest Writers Association memoir competition in 2011 and was published by She Writes Press in 2015. She has also recently been named a finalist in the National Indie Excellence Awards for memoirs. So welcome. How are you doing today, Constance?
I'm fine. Thank you, Lori, for having me on the program. And for today, you can call me Connie.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Connie. I never quite know, and so it's always, I appreciate you telling me instead of tripping over my words here.
I used Constance for all my writing. My father gave me the name Constance, and it's sort of in his honor when I began writing poetry that I signed all my work with Constance.
Oh, that's nice.
So,
yeah. How sweet. How sweet is that? Well, needless to say, you've been touched by dementia because the book is about your mother's Alzheimer's disease. Can you give us a little background just for our audience, when you started to see signs with your mom, and you know, just kind of a little history there would be helpful.
Okay. Well, that was the difficult part, the signs. The signs were not readily visible at first. It took, I think, well into her last year before she was diagnosed when we could say, oh, this is why Mom was more angry with us than normal. Because she had an outlook on life that was, you know, she grew up with, it was a hard family that she lived in, and she developed some bitterness, negativity. And so when she became more bitter as life went on, we couldn't really see the signs. It was only until afterwards that when she was diagnosed that we could say, well, that's why Mom left or circled around the park when we were having a party. She didn't really want to join us. So it's a little muddled in our case.
Okay, and that's, I think, pretty typical for so many. It's hard to kind of figure that whole thing out. One of the questions that I know a lot of people struggle with who are dealing with dementia is, should I write about this or not, and who do I share it with? How did you decide to write the book? And did you struggle with, you know, is this going to invade anybody's privacy? I know for some that's a really big issue, and then for others they just feel, no, this really needs to be told.
Well, absolutely on all those counts. You know, I say I'm a poet who stumbled into memoir because I was writing poetry about family and my mother and our relationship, and I realized I had an awful lot to say about what was going on. And so I decided to write longer stories about our relationships, and it became mountains of material that I realized I could turn into a memoir. And when I had completed a first draft, I actually had my brother and my sister both read it because I was concerned about how they would be affected. I do talk an awful lot about them in the book as part of our, our family relationships and the dynamics of our relationships. And so I was concerned about their reactions. And they actually said, well, this is the way things happen. This is an important story. It was definitely an important story for me. I needed to figure out my mother and I had a very complicated and flawed relationship. And I think it was only through the writing that I could make some sense out of it. My poetry teacher down in Santa Cruz, her name is Ellen Bass, and she used to say, Connie, what is it that you're really trying to say? And by that time I had chapters of all these scenes of my mother and after she was diagnosed and being in hospitals and finally in the care units, Alzheimer's care units. And it took me a long time to discover that I was trying to be that perfect daughter for her. And this was a revelation to me. I was a constant, I'm still discovering things about myself, about my mother and our relationship. So I think it was very important, and I think everyone can understand also how when illness strikes the family, the things that you discover about yourselves, and it's just important for your mental health, in other words.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
writing really is healing on so many levels. I mean, if you share it with anyone or not, it really is a way to release things. And I mean, I was on a journey with my mom for 30 years, and my dad died of cancer, and I will, I'll write stories that are so old, and I'll still be crying as I'm writing them, but I know that they're beautiful stories, and it's great to relive, but it's almost like turning on a faucet of just letting the emotion flow through you, so it doesn't get stuck, and come out sideways.
Exactly.
It can be a tough thing, for a lot of people to put pen to paper and then to actually go through the work, the hours and hours of work of putting a book together. I don't think everybody realizes how much you have to really want to write the book to get it done, because it is a lot of work.
It's very true, and you really have to, from your own writing too, to become that objective onlooker and say, am I presenting a certain scene the way it really happened? The way, am I showing my mother in a certain light that is justifiable? Am I making sense of it all? And the writer Dina Metzger said that to remember is to remember, to put all the parts of our lives to make it a whole. And I just love that quote. And I felt that's what I was doing to the best of my ability. But again, like you said, in order to write and to put it on paper, you do have to have some objectivity so you can go back and say, oh, that sounds right. I can leave that alone, and try to edit it through all the drafts. It did take me 5 years to get from one point to the next.
Well, and it's interesting too, I would think, because I haven't written my book or published them, but I've shared stories with my brothers, and they're like, "Well, that's not how I remember it,"
Well,
and I'm like, "You weren't even there for this, so you wouldn't remember it at all." But I mean, people do have their different perspectives.
Exactly.
Of situations. And so, did you run into that at all with family?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. My sister is 6 years older than me. My brother is 4 years older. My brother has told me that he has no recollections of being young in our house when we were growing up. My memories are just seared into my brain. My sister, on the other hand, she'll remember things quite differently. And so we all have grown up in different families. We're the same, there's siblings in the same family. But depending on your age and where you were, if somebody was living at home or if they'd already gone to college, we had different families. Mm-hmm. And that certainly plays a part in the whole storytelling.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It is interesting dynamics. I mean, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts, about that whole thing, and and how that plays out. And I know sometimes people can get into actual arguments over it, in terms of what happened and how. And I haven't run into that with my own family, but I know others have, and can be really disruptive and kind of almost turn dysfunctional for some families.
Well, I've been very grateful to my siblings because they've been more than supportive, and I think they also realize too, the story itself is an important one that so many people are facing today. And it's just increasing at such an incredible rate. Back in 2000, when my mother was first diagnosed, I didn't really know of anyone else who was going through what we were going through. Not in my immediate, family or friend situation. Although, as time went on, we found out that my mother had 3 sisters, and within a 2-year time frame, they all developed Alzheimer's. So there was a very genetic background here.
Wow.
But
now, does that scare you at all for yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But it's like anything in terms of writing the book. I reached a certain point of acceptance, and that's how I cope. I have my coping strategies. It is a scary prospect, and my children. I have a son and a daughter, and they're both aware of my history. And I think even though you say all these things, when it ultimately happens, you don't know how you'll react. But to the best of my ability, I can say that I've, at least with my own mother, I know the ramifications and try to reach a point where I can be accepting and keep communicating and all that goes along with it.
Yeah, it's as I get older, I used to say no, it doesn't bug me, but it is in the back of my mind now, and but there isn't really anything that I can do about it, and I think you still have to live your life to the fullest and just continue to move forward and just see how things play out for ourselves. But it could be really easy to go down the rabbit hole. Could be really easy to go down the rabbit hole and stuff. So do your siblings talk about it at all, or?
Not very much. Not like me. But they do listen. But I just feel that like you said, we can't control what our minds are going to do, but we can control what we feel.
Yep.
And so as long as we can still live with a certain compassion and dignity and treat all our fellow people, especially when they are dealing with families who are dealing with dementia, it just that is just some important points to keep in mind.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Can you tell us a little bit about how did you cope with your mom's disease?
Well, I think first of all, it came with a point of learning how to accept what was happening in the first place. My mom was obviously, like all people at the time, fighting for her life, and she had a very difficult time. Her behavior, she was becoming more angry at the world, at us, at her kids. Couldn't understand at all what was happening to her. She was completely out of control. It was quite heartbreaking. So I think trying to accept the fact that, this is an example. My mother was always very meticulous in her grooming and clothes, and when I would visit her, she would wear mismatched clothes or things that needed laundering, or she would bite her nails. So I think one way of dealing with it was to remind myself that it was important to compliment her for the small but the really necessary accomplishments she made every day. Like if she didn't want to go down and get her hair styled at the little beauty shop downstairs, I'd say, well, I like the way your hair, looks, I like the way you brushed it today. It went a long way to diffuse the disappointment in her living situation. And so I think accepting and realizing that her problem-solving ability was diminishing. There's a story of when she first got a roommate in her assisted living center, and one night, her name was Anna, she walked into my mother's part of the suite and stood over her bed, and my mother thought she was going to get hit. And she was struggling and yelling because she thought Anna was going to hit her. Well, she was thinking back to something in the past. And so she couldn't make that connection she couldn't problem solve for herself in that moment and say, oh, this is what's happening, but that was the past. So I think I trained myself to listen to her more carefully, to accept her. Every time I visited, I told her I loved her. We told old family stories, even if she repeated the same stories over and over and asked the same questions over and over. I think you tried to be patient and calm, and before you know it, I was laughing unconsciously about something, and she would too, although she wouldn't know what she'd really be laughing about. So I think between huge adjustment, I had a wonderful spouse at the time, my siblings, my children, close friends who gave me support. And it's, as I wrote in the book, it was a lot about letting go of so many things, especially guilt, because I wondered constantly, since I lived far away from my sister who was on the front lines of this, so to speak, I wondered if I was doing the right thing, if I was doing enough to help. So, but it can crush your spirit, and I needed to let go of that. I needed to let go of the guilt and understand that this disease was progressing the way it was going to progress.
Yeah, that letting go is just massive, isn't it?
It really is. It's difficult.
Not something we're taught to do.
Nope.
It's almost like we're taught to hold on to all the baggage and all the things we can't control. But it's such a gift once you can get there, because you don't realize how much it distracts you, that guilt. It just is clawing at every nerve in your body constantly, and we almost just get used to it until it's gone, and then it's like there's this comfort, and you're like, how do I get in this soft, cushy spot, that feels good, where I can laugh more, I can play more, and I can be more connected, and it's very, for me anyways, I found it just as one of the biggest gifts I probably will ever receive in my entire life, and I hope it's something that I don't ever lose the ability to do. And not that I don't struggle with it, but I've gotten a lot better. a lot better in
that's
all
excellent.
areas. Yeah.
Excellent point.
You know, and I loved how you said, some of your coping and kind of lessons learned were just listening to her more and accepting. I mean, just those are such basic things, but we don't do them well in society. We're so fast paced. I mean, we listen, but we don't always hear, and we don't always process, and we don't always validate. But we listen, I heard you.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
Yes. But when you're sitting down with someone with dementia, Alzheimer's, that's just the opposite of what you have to do. Everything is slowed down, right? It's slowed down to the point where it can't get much slower. And it forces you to listen more carefully. And some people can be patient, and if you can, it's wonderful. Like you said, it is a gift. And I feel the same way. I feel blessed that I was able to.
Yeah, it's, one of the things when you were talking about slowing down, it can't get much slower. One of the things that came to me when you said that was it just getting used to the silence, getting comfortable with silence, that we are more than just talk. There's this energy connection that we have that, again, we kind of take for granted, or that we don't really look at the nonverbal signals. All the different ways that we communicate are so powerful, and that slowing down and getting us to feel comfortable or even recognize that there's silence, and not having to fill it, but just kind of, relaxing in it and learning from it is quite powerful in and of itself too. You also mentioned about talking about old stories and how all of a sudden you would just, break out in laughter. And oh my gosh, I remember so many times with my mom doing that. And it was, people would look at you like you're nuts, and it was just like, but you just had the best time. And it was just, and it wasn't planned. It just happened. But did you find...
And those were the best moments. Go ahead.
I was going to say, did you find, for me, one of the things my mom taught me was to kind of be able to play and be silly, because I had gotten so serious as an adult. But I laughed harder. I cried harder, probably too. But I felt everything at a greater level.
Definitely.
And I was so much more appreciative of, like you said, the little things of, going over those old stories were probably one of your favorites, and most meaningful, and just so simple but so powerful when we allow it to happen.
Right. And perhaps some stories she would remember, some stories she didn't. And when she didn't, it was like opening a new world for her. It was like, I'm learning something new today, Connie, she'd say. I didn't realize that what happened to Grandma, or whatever. And the important thing was for me to not say, oh, don't you remember? I mean, we never, of course, you don't say things of this sort. You just say, well, this is what happened, and don't you think that, don't you think that is funny? And that was great. Sometimes it was just that little glint in her eye. She could be clever and witty without even realizing it. But then again, accepting what would happen after that, sometimes she would fade away. But like you said, silence, that was okay too. Reading those body signals, getting back into the moment, that was all was part of it.
Yeah. Now you kind of talk about at times feeling like an imperfect daughter? Can you? I think many of us have those thoughts if we're a daughter or son or granddaughter or neighbor or friend, but those strong feelings of imperfection and not living up. Can you explain kind of how you felt like an imperfect daughter?
Well, I think that goes back to so many years. Growing up in a very small town, we were Catholic. We went to Catholic grade school, had a lot of fear instilled in me early on in terms of religion and with my parents. And it just seemed like that was learned very early on. So when she became ill, it was hard to know if I knew what to do for her, if I knew what the right thing to do was. She had such strong opinions about everything that what I thought many times I thought she would disagree with. And I don't know, it was just difficult. And I think especially when she became ill, we had to find an attorney, sell her house, get an auctioneer. The idea of selling her all her belongings at such minimal prices, that was her only income. I questioned everything along the way. And I think that, emphasized the fact of I was trying to do everything just right, trying to be just that perfect person for her. And as I discovered, I was trying to be the perfect sister as well for my sister who was there, trying to go as many times as I could to visit, trying to be as much help as I could. My sister and I had phone calls, since I'm on the West Coast and she's in the Midwest. Our phone calls, it was nothing to have a 3-hour phone call to discuss something or other about our mom. And so that feeling of imperfection kind of grew. And it was from feeling that within my family to my sister.
Okay. Yeah, I can see. I know my brothers had. And I felt at times where I wasn't doing enough, and my brothers looked at me like, "You're doing a ton. What do you mean?" And but they really struggled, I think, with not the guilt and not feeling like they were doing enough, or not knowing how to do enough, or not living up to one of the things was not living up to my standards, my rules, because I was kind of the girl in charge. And we had a really interesting conversation over that, where I thought, wow, I had no idea I was pushing them away by wanting things done certain ways, because they couldn't fit, but they just did things different than I did. And but I was so concerned about mom and dad having proper care that I was really a fierce taskmaster, more than what I even knew that I was, until a day we had a conversation, and I realized that they had missed out, and didn't have a lot of memories that I had, and it was because they weren't there. And I said I felt awful, but I thought, you know what, I'm not picking up all that guilt either. They could have.
You can't.
They could have said something too. They got to be responsible.
That's
too.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm going to fall right back into that trap I just got myself out of. So.
Well, that's important too. Each person has to take responsibility for what they can do and what they can't do. We don't all work alike, and we can't all think alike. And
that'd be pretty boring.
It would be pretty boring, but it's a given, and especially in families. We don't all agree, and it's coming to that compromise. I was very fortunate in the fact that my sister and I well, we kid ourselves as adults. We're kind of like interchangeable people. we think a lot alike, so that helped. But it still the idea. I'm still a perfectionist. Still a perfectionist, especially like in my writing. And especially telling my mother's story, which was really our story. I mean, I wanted it to be as best as it could be.
Yeah, to honor her.
Oh.
Is there a favorite story or two that you'd like to share with our audience at all?
Regarding like, let's see.
Just anything that comes to mind. And I know, I mean, when people ask me that too, it's hard because there's just so many precious moments and stuff. But
yeah. Well, there was my mother had my mother craved pizza. She was a pizzaholic, and even in her first assisted living center, when she lived there, of course, they didn't serve pizza or a lot of pizza. So my sister would take her out once a week to get pizza. And one time I had visited her in her, I think it was probably right after she had moved into this brand new facility. It was just wonderful. And this was back in Illinois. And my son was there, my daughter, my husband, and we were all sitting in the country kitchen. It was still the morning, and she was getting hungry. And I do write about this in the book, but it still makes me laugh to this day. So we were all sitting there around the table, and I could see her. She was getting a little agitated and getting hungry. And my daughter was about, she was late teens, I believe. And she says, "Grandma, there's apples and bananas right there in a little bowl on the counter. You know, would you like a banana?" "No," she said. I'm really getting hungry to go to Rosati's for pizza." And I looked at my watch and I said, "Well, Mom," I said, gosh, it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock. We've got hours to go before we go to Rosati's. And so, she's starting to stew a little bit. And then my son reaches in his, I carried a deck of cards to play cards on the plane and everything. And he said, "Grandma, let's play cards." He says, let's play rummy or play war or whatever. She was always a great card person as well, loved card games. She taught my son how to play poker when other little boys were playing Go Fish. Anyway, so they started a card game, and before you know it, her mind is completely off food, and you can just see the little twinkle coming back in her eye, and that was a great moment. My kids were so exceptionally thoughtful. My mother lightened her mood, just lightened. It was just a great, great moment until she realized again how hungry she was. But, and we did end up going to Rosati's and the pizza, and but my kids were just really lifesavers that day. They knew how to help me and help their grandma. It was great. Mm-hmm.
Kids are just wonderful, aren't they, with the whole process?
Well, they sure help, and my kids were exceptional. They had no qualms about, yes, we're going to go in there and see Grandma. And actually they would pay attention to the other people on the floor. And, this is where I always say about the importance of treating people like they are people. They have their dignity. And they would talk to, greet the others, talk to them, ask them questions, or, just little things to help make their day go a little bit better.
Yeah, I remember my daughter doing that too. I mean, it really became part of the community, and there wasn't that fear. you know. It was,
Exactly.
you know, and they got to know them. I mean, she would even go up and help when family would visit and go, oh, well, they, you know, they might not have seen this, and oh, this is what we've been doing. And it was kind of amazing to watch the kids interact and the brilliance of it, because you see so many adults that are so scared. So scared.
Oh, yes. Yes,
and stuff.
definitely.
So, big difference there. Well, what a fun story. I think that this is amazing. One of the things that I find interesting too with your story is, you know, you mentioned that your sister was kind of the primary caregiver, and I don't know if I've ever read a book where because usually it's the primary caregiver who's writing the story, and so I think that it's really interesting that even though you weren't that person, you were so intricately involved in everything, probably more so than what you even realize, in terms of supporting your sister and your mom, and you know, your family in general through this whole process, and in honoring, you know, the disease process and the journey that comes with it. Is pretty neat. Did your kids have any thoughts in terms of you writing this book and how it was going to play out?
Well, they were very encouraging. I mean, all along, they knew I was writing something. Actually, probably more than I realized. I was writing in notebooks, and I hadn't transcribed anything into the computer. And I'd say, you know, well, I've got this story about when I was a kid with Grandma, and before you know it, through there, you know, a lot of encouragement, the stories kind of added up. And then I transcribed everything into the computer, into what I realized was becoming a memoir. But they did know what was going on, and they were very encouraging. I think they realized how important it was for me to write about it.
Yeah. Are they writers themselves at all?
No. Actually, I have my first grandson turned 7, and he actually is the one we're finding out who likes to write stories. He'll be in the 2nd grade, but he reads at a level much higher, and he's been writing little stories. He's putting together little booklets, which is interesting because I go, oh, good, another writer.
Oh, very fun. Very fun.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, very, very neat. Well, I just, you know, I love to be able to, you know, read these books and then to share them with others. And, you know, everybody's journey is so different yet so similar. And there's so much that we can learn and share. And, you know, when I give these books out and things when I speak, and people just find so much peace at knowing that they're not on this journey alone, and that some of the things they've tried, others have tried, and it hasn't worked for them either, and they got frustrated or sad, and then the joy of something working and those beautiful, touching moments. And, you know, your words can really help, even for someone who's not comfortable writing. You know, reading words can help us heal as well. And it's so nice to see, you know, a large collection of these books coming to the force now. So I thank you so much for sharing a piece of you and your family with us all.
Thank you.
I know it's not an easy thing to always do, you know, to share such a personal piece and such a personal side. Did you have any fear when you first pushed the book out of, you know, what will people think or what will they say? Because I hear that from a lot of authors too.
Well, to be honest, I really didn't. It was my story. It was my mother's story, and it was the truth, and I really didn't have that fear that most people have. I told it like it was, and I just didn't have that fear, which made it easier perhaps to deal with rejections and sometimes wanting to give up. But I just kept pursuing the fact that, well, I wanted people to see another viewpoint because it is helpful. I've read an awful lot of memoirs myself, and like you said, it is. Words are powerful things, and they can help us in so many ways that we don't even know possible. It can be just on such an unconscious level you realize, well, I remember back when I read this story, and there was this one phrase. I can remember little phrases that people write or tell in their stories. And so I did not feel the fear. I just I felt the importance of it.
Yeah, and there's huge importance factor there. So I'm so glad that you that you did share your story, and it's just I have to say the cover is just beautiful. It's just kind of this soft green, and it's just it's very comforting, and it just even the feel of it just feels soft and comfortable in your hands, which not all books do. And go ahead.
I was just going to say about the cover. We went round and round on our cover. And it began as kind of a grayish look. And then when the subtitle changed, the Opening My Heart, I said, well, it allows an element of hope, and a hope in maybe perhaps how the person who's, like for me, the writer, that there's hope in the story, that there's some kind of sense of understanding and compassion, and that's what the cover I was trying to get at. Like you said, it's very soft colors, but it's hopeful. Yeah,
I like too in here just a simple graphic that you have, which is kind of it's a dandelion, a dead dandelion that's got the kind of the white fluffs on it, and then a few just little seeds floating away. And I just thought, when I was reading this, I just thought, well, how poignant is that? Because with cognitive impairment, things just kind of float away.
Yeah, they do. They do, bit by bit.
Yep. Yeah,
exactly. Well, thank you for noticing that.
Yeah. Well, I wish you great success with your book, and I hope that you'll put it in. I don't know if you've put it in our resource directory or not, but if not, I would love you to add that in there. I'll send you out instructions in case I haven't done that. I can't always remember myself what I've done.
Okay. No, I haven't received that, but I would be happy to. That would be wonderful.
That would be great. And then do you want to give people your website and how they can go ahead and reach you?
Yes. Website is the best. It's www.constancehanstead.com. And on this you can find my blog. I include poetry because that is still a huge part of my life. Also, can reach me right on the website through Twitter and Facebook. There's a link to all of that.
Wonderful.
So, perfect. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, like I said, I'm just thrilled you were able to join us today and share your story. Again, the name of the book is Don't Leave Yet, How My Mother's Alzheimer's Opened My Heart by Constance Hanstead. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I look forward to our next show. Next week, we're going to be talking about the movie Cracked, which was done up in Canada, and then we're also going to be speaking on memory cafes and Alzheimer's cafes as well. Thank you all, and have a blessed week. Bye now.
Hey everybody, Jared Sebestier, host of Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. Few people can just flip the switch from working a career 30 or 40 plus years, retiring on Friday without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.